The past few days have convinced me more than ever that the Democrats and their American media sycophants are feverishly attempting to use the hashtag MeToo moment for Trump's undoing. Now that the Democrats have extracted this massive increase in domestic spending in the budget bill, they've essentially given up on the idea of working with the Republicans to actually improve the country and solve some problems. Pelosi, Schumer, Durbin have come to the conclusion that the only way to beat Trump is to avoid debates on his policies, which, let's face it, for the most part, are showing signs of working. And so what they're instead doing is resorting to full-on demonization and guilt by association. And sadly, it was obvious, almost from the start, that the Me Too movement would become more about politics than justice. You think about it. Justice requires more than an accusation and a denial. It involves probable cause, the rules of evidence, no hearsay allowed, and the cross-examination of witnesses, for instance. You know, this antiquated notion of innocent until proven guilty. Now, of course, in some cases, the evidence is overwhelming. You think about Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey, they come to mind. And their disgusting, even criminal behavior was well known by the glitterati for decades. But after the two went off to rehab and the Me Too thing really ramped up, let's face it, the folks pushing the movement really moved on to their real target, Donald J. Trump.
If anyone knows about inappropriate behavior in the workplace at NBC, it's Donald J. Trump. Is he aware that he's him?
There's one industry that isn't even trying to get rid of sexual predators, and that is politics.
Do you want to be part of Sexual Assault Month? I'm in. When do I start?
That's such a bad impersonation of Trump, by the way. I'm sorry, it's really lame. Remember last week as well, the press exploded with stories about that guy Rob Porter, a name most of you hadn't heard of before last week. Well, he's a former staff secretary to President Trump who was accused by two former wives and a recent girlfriend of abusive behavior. His reportedly tumultuous relationships, to say the least, apparently didn't, however, affect his work, which by all accounts was top-notch. Even one of his ex-wives said she didn't think he should be fired, despite what she claimed were his anger problems. And on Friday, the president refused to throw Porter to the wolves.
I found out about it recently, and I was surprised by it. But we certainly wish him well. It's a obviously tough time for him. He did a very good job when he was in the White House. And we hope he has a wonderful career, and hopefully he will have a great career ahead of him. He says he's innocent. And I think you have to remember that. He said very strongly yesterday that he's innocent.
Well, that was heresy, because apparently the only acceptable response from the president would have been condemning Porter to a life of misery and inviting the wives to the White House for a Me Too lunch.
Trumpism doesn't merely tolerate sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is a very apt metaphor for everything Trumpism is. This is a rape culture presidency, and Donald Trump has become the commander-in-chief of American rape culture.
This is a sexist, racist, and misogynistic administration and government. Trumpism is not about anything else more than misogyny.
He continues to not speak up for the victims or the people who've been abused, but for the abusers.
Well, it's fine. I think the president could have mentioned the people who claim that Porter did that to him. Absolutely. The ex-wives, sure, he could have mentioned it. Maybe probably should have. But excuse me if I don't think that the Democrats really care all that much about women who are victims of abuse and harassment. Remember, folks, they campaigned with Bill Clinton. They partied with Harvey. They ridiculed Paula Jones and Juanita Broderick. And they looked the other way when abuse was occurring for years because it helped them professionally, personally, politically, or all three. It was only when Rose McGowan and Ronan Farrow exposed the truth about Weinstein that stars, starlets, producers, directors, and even Hillary Clinton were forced to issue their late-in-the-game denunciations. And ditto for Congress. You know, they didn't begin their soul-searching moments until reports emerged of a secret House slush fund that was used to pay settlements to those who were accused of wrongdoing, politicians and staff. Oh, and by the way, while we're on that, Congressman John Conyers, who was forced into retirement over harassment allegations, he was an old lech for years, and everybody knew that. So I ask you, if these Democrats cared so much about women, especially vulnerable young women, why didn't any of them speak up? Oh, we all know why. Now, this is really good. Even a Supreme Court justice seems to be hopping on the MeToo bandwagon, citing a toxic, testosterone-filled atmosphere for Hillary's election loss.
I think it was difficult for Hillary Clinton to get by even the macho atmosphere prevailing during that campaign. Anyone who watched that campaign unfold would answer the same way I did. Yes, sexism played a prominent part.
I'm sure she can decide any case involving Trump without any prejudice whatsoever. It's an outrage. This is another reason, by the way, to question life tenure for Supreme Court justices. She has basically become a political pundit. Look out, Rachel Maddow. She could have her own show on MSNBC. And then there was 2020 Democrat hopeful New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand.
I think he should resign, and if he's unwilling to do that, which is what I assume, then Congress should hold him accountable. We are obligated to have hearings.
And has she ever returned that money that Bill Clinton raised for her? I haven't followed that, but I doubt it. Look, Gillibrand has fully weaponized, and I'm sick of that word, but I'm going to use it anyway, fully weaponized the MeToo hashtag movement with the intention of driving the female vote in the midterms and ultimately sweeping herself right into the Oval Office. And while we all condemn actual abuse and harassment in all of its forms, regardless of where it occurs, the last time I checked, jobs, the economy, healthcare, education were still the top issues for voters, including women. Nonetheless, let's face it, a shift may be underway, especially among younger voters. Ted Cruz said over the weekend that the left would crawl over broken glass to vote in the midterms. Thinking about it, he's probably right. And if Gillibrand has her way, most of those with cuts on their hands and knees are going to be women. The left is really busy marshaling their allies, their resources across the cultural and political spectrum to make the president toxic to women and ultimately drive him from office. And the president has already seen some erosion in his female support. Democrats know this is a magic bullet for them. If they turn the women's vote by just a few percentage points, it can mean the difference in the midterms and in 2020. But I want to be clear here. This is, by all means, not a lost cause. That's not what I'm saying, contrary to what MSNBC, CNN would have you believe. Most women want greater economic opportunities. They want safe streets. They want solid public schools for their kids. And they want health care that covers the big stuff. I think that's for most of us. And the president is doing more on all of those fronts than I think the past two presidents combined. And he needs to sell this directly to the voters, including women voters, directly. But tone matters, especially with women. It's not just what you say, but how you say it. And sometimes it's also what you fail to say. That can be just as important as what you do say. So if he comes on too strong or too defensively in tweets or in off-the-cuff exchanges with reporters, he could set himself back. And he could confirm the unfair caricature the left promotes 24/7. And that could mean disastrous results. And that's the angle.